Oz Ed, and you're here on Winner Take All, where we talk about the constant struggle between large tech monopolies and traditional incumbents. You may have noticed our nice little intro video. Kirk, nice new production value there. So, topics today, we're going to start off with looking at the Nike news that you may have heard about last week, where they have a new CEO, John Donahoe, who used to be the head of eBay. And you can appreciate that John understands a thing or two about marketplaces. And basically, the guy didn't waste any time in terms of withdrawing all of the Nike products from Amazon.
But I don't think he's officially started yet, right? He's not officially taken on the post yet, but is basically the CEO to be, and they're already pulling out. So making moves pretty quickly.
Yes. I think maybe he was on their board or something, or
yeah,
I feel like
he's been involved.
He was on the board. Yeah, he was involved.
But he's not yet the active CEO of the company.
Clearly, it's been a thorn in John's side for a long time. So the interesting thing to note, when Amazon did get Nike to come on board, they made a lot of concessions they would normally never make with a manufacturer. Traditionally, you see that the marketplace model is that you get access to fragmented supply from distributors. Think about them as like the wholesalers, the middlemen between the manufacturer and the retailers. And that's how you get access to this fragmented supply, because the marketplace isn't going to the manufacturers at the onset, just because the manufacturers either don't want to deal with small order sizes, they don't want to deal with all the infrastructure required, they don't want to basically turn off and annoy all of their distributors, right? So manufacturers are not the initial entry point that a marketplace would typically try to go and capture supply from. That happens as like a phase 2 or a phase 3. So basically, Amazon gets scale from other distributors first. It gets supply. People were selling Nike shoes on Amazon illegitimately, basically.
It was a gray market or Nike would probably maybe even use more harsh terms than that, like a black market for Nike goods that weren't sold by licensed distributors, weren't authorized to resell these products.
Probably some were fake, some were genuine.
Right.
The customer suffered, but Amazon would have Nike products on it.
Right. If you search Amazon, Nike stuff comes up, even if Nike's not there.
Not the best supply, but some supply. So Amazon said, okay, Nike, come on board. We will take off all other products. The only products on Amazon will be from Nike.
Right.
And they're
going to control this gray market. From a Nike point of view, it's kind of like extortion. Like, it's going to be here regardless. Why don't you come play and we'll give you some tools? Right,
to take it down. Now, actually, Amazon doesn't even offer that up to many other manufacturers. This was honestly like a sweetheart deal for Amazon to come that far to get Nike on board.
A big retailer to join.
Yep. So Nike obviously has its own retail stores, its own e-commerce. I mean, Nike has invested significant resources in owning the customer relationship. So they were probably saying, hey, we're making concession as well to capitulate and actually put some inventory on Amazon. They probably were never putting the full catalog on Amazon, but at least they'd said, we want to clear up the black market on Amazon.
Clear presence. I can tell you definitely Nike was never happy about having to be there. But they felt like in a certain case, they needed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what led to that relationship. And of course, clearly they felt it isn't worth the effort.
So here's my prediction. My prediction that I would say by the end of 2020, Nike buys one of the secondhand marketplace sneaker companies.
GOAT or StockX.
StockX. I'd probably put my money on StockX. I think StockX is like a hair ahead of GOAT in terms of GMV, in terms of like the really hardcore sneakerheads that I know. This is anecdotal. Always prefer StockX over GOAT.
Doesn't StockX also have like a relationship with Flight Club, or is that GOAT?
GOAT took over Flight Club.
Okay. That's in New York. It's
GOAT
a big
took $100 million from Foot Locker.
Right.
StockX was started by Dan Gilbert,
Yep.
who owns the Cavs and Quicken and all these things.
Right.
And Nike, although really more so because of Dan and the Cavs, when LeBron was on the Cavs, it was actually, I think, the first direct to, first sneaker launch directly on the marketplace. And we were playing a video with the CEO of StockX a couple weeks ago on like Complex or something. Lots of swearing in that clip. Some funny stuff, some just ridiculous stuff. And what he was saying is he views, if you're familiar with like Dutch auctions or basically the direct listings on the stock market, he wants to basically do that and bring that model to StockX, where sneakers and sneaker manufacturers are releasing the sneaker directly onto the market, and then the market sets the price.
Right.
And so you kind of get away from this whole idea of, it retails for $200, then on the secondary market it goes for $500, but you just let the market figure out the price for it, which is essentially what a direct listing is, rather than an IPO process, as we've covered on the show before. So I think John loves marketplaces. Clearly, he understands network effects very well. What share of the secondhand marketplace industry does Nike, are comprised of Nike products? Probably at least half.
Yeah, between
it's
the
like
main
Yeezys
brands
but now I guess the
Jordans
designers like the Balenciagas and all those are coming in.
Right, but if I'm Nike, why wouldn't I want to own a piece of that too? Because that gives me access to up and coming designers, and I can start to build this community, which will only benefit my core business.
And I think that's some of what you're seeing. You're starting to see other manufacturers come into, at least at the high end of the market,
right?
Come into that market by partnering up with a celebrity or being a big fashion design house like Dior.
Yeah.
And making a sneaker. It's not that hard to make a sneaker. It's more
from a strictly product point of view. Yeah, a lot of it is
the prestige, is
marketing,
the design
and branding,
right?
Which is part of what Nike does really well.
Yeah. So that's my prediction. In the next 13 and a half months, Nike buys most likely StockX, maybe GOAT, but I think Foot Locker probably has some, right of first refusal or some provisions in there. So it wouldn't be as clean. So that's why I think they buy StockX. But at least, and it doesn't have to be those two. It could be like Stadium Goods, but I think Nike's going to buy the leader, which to me seems like StockX. So we'll see. And I think it'd be a great move. So let's go back to Amazon. So we had spoken previously on the show about how Amazon product managers would go to third-party sellers, would say, hey, give me the purchase order because I want to verify that your products are legit. The product manager then goes directly to the manufacturer, sources the products directly from the manufacturer, cutting out their third-party seller from the transaction.
Right.
It's totally not okay, completely inappropriate behavior, complete abuse of the data that they're getting from sellers. So again, in that supply side, anti-competitive practices, we've spoken about that. But now this article from Wall Street Journal says Amazon's heavy recruitment of Chinese sellers puts consumers at risk. And it says it wooed China's manufacturers to sell directly to the U.S. That is exactly what we were talking about, where they would go around, they'd get the purchase order, they go directly to the manufacturer.
There are quotes in this article from people that basically that's exactly what happened to them. I was selling this product, and then they went direct to the manufacturer who undercut me by 50% or whatever it was.
A, from an anti-competition, antitrust standpoint, not okay. B, this is a common critique of where marketplaces can let the customer down is for a lack of quality or a lack of vetting, or you just have bad product that your customers are buying,
right?
Whether it's fake or just poor quality,
or in some cases illegal. It doesn't meet regulations for certain kind of things like cosmetics or baby products.
Unsafe, right? Exactly, and that's that's where you've seen some linear e-commerce players carve out a play because they're linear and they say, hey, you are going to benefit from a more highly curated selection like Chewy.
I think you've seen that, funnily enough, in China as a big example. There's a big market for basically linear players that import things like baby food and baby products because a lot of Chinese consumers don't trust Chinese manufacturers.
Right.
So they want like basically curated imported products for those kinds of things and are willing to pay for it.
Right. So yeah, where I think safety is a big concern. That could be for your pet. That could be for your child.
Some millennials will tell you they don't know the difference.
I guess like electronics, but I don't know. That's kind of a whole other thing. Refurbished electronics.
Right.
But you've seen some select examples, some select niches of kind of the consumer retail spectrum where that curation helps. In large part, though, I would say if you're not in one of those product categories, then by having strong rules and standards that help and really strongly favor the consumer over the producer, the seller, Amazon has, I think, been able to overcome this without too many issues.
The journals made a big deal of what I think they say are like 11,000 listings they found that have problems of some variety.
It's like 0.0001%.
Put that in context. Amazon has like 400 to 500 million SKUs. So it's tiny. But the interesting thing is that they said basically of the products they found that had problems, those 10 or 11,000, I think it was like 52% or over half were basically these Chinese companies that had come onto the platform within the last couple of years. So it's clearly a big source of where that problem is coming from. I think not too surprisingly. But I think within specific areas, it's an issue. But I think in the broader context of Amazon's marketplace, it's not an existential threat.
Yeah, because as long as there's not really a safety or security concern, you just return the product for free. They give you a label. It's very easy, seamless process of returning.
It's a customer experience issue.
There's really no questions asked on Amazon's part if this is a legitimate return.
Right.
It gets returned and you can drop it off at any number of places. It can come get picked up. It clearly isn't slowing them down. I think the Journal just likes to blow these stories up more, but it is interesting in terms of how Amazon, I think, has been able to solve this. What is commonly the gripe, where you hear from a lot of retailers that are very slow to open up their marketplace, like a Target.
Yes.
Right. Where Target's like, oh yeah, we have a marketplace, but it's just a curated marketplace.
Well, it's really a handful of partners. It's not even really a marketplace. Just means that not everything isn't in their warehouse.
But this is the reason why the reason why it's like the boogeyman. This is the reason why many retailers will say, oh, well, our consumers, they trust us.
Right. The problem is that most of those consumers these days really trust Amazon more than those guys because they're going to Amazon first.
And they understand the model and they'll say, okay, Amazon's going to take care of me and I can return it and they'll make me whole. I don't got to worry about it. It's an easy process. And so there's other platform mechanics that you can use to get over these hurdles. The idea of completely, the value prop of letting in millions of third-party sellers and hundreds of millions of third-party SKUs versus 11,000 SKUs. I'm taking the marketplace model.
Right. And there's a reason, I don't know the exact number, but certainly the majority of product searches online these days start on Amazon and not these retailers' websites. It's because
or even Google.
Consumers trust the marketplace and the value prop of the marketplace, and that there's enough quality and selection there that overcomes these kind of hesitancies and concerns. I think it's an unfortunate excuse that is, I think in many cases, has prevented retailers from winning when opportunities were in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, the Amazon streak continues. In Amazon Business, this is the market in B2B distribution. B2B distribution is $6 to $8 trillion in size. Consumer retail in just the United States is $2.5 trillion. Healthcare by comparison is $3 trillion. So B2B distribution is bigger than both of those things combined. It is massive. So there's a report out. Amazon Business dominates the B2B marketplace market. We've spoken many, many times about Amazon Business having a being a top 20 B2B distributor holistically within the B2B distribution space.
All right. So they do 10 billion plus GMV. I think this was as of what, like February this year?
No. 10 billion was as of last fall. Okay. I think they're probably 15 to 20 billion at this point.
So at 10 billion, they basically, if you compare their sales to the sales of other distributors, they're a top 20.
At 10 billion, company. They're top 20. Now they're probably top 10. Basically, if they're at 15, 20.
Right.
They don't necessarily disclose this stuff regularly. So this survey, the one critique I have on the survey is they said they had 90 purchasing managers. That's really who this survey was. The survey of 90 purchasing managers, and then they have some stats, right? So basically it's saying B2B buyers are giving lots of business to Amazon Business, 72% to Amazon Business, 30% to Alibaba. That's kind of weird. 55% of buyers will increase their spending on Amazon. The future bodes well for all marketplaces.
Right. Basically, that says more buyers are going to be buying more stuff on marketplaces
right.
In the future. 4
in 10 business buyers are spending at least 11% of their procurement budget on B2B. 20% are spending more than 26%. So, the takeaway here is it's small and it's continuing to grow. I think there are many verticals within B2B distribution. It would have been helpful to have more clarity on what these purchasing managers are overseeing. My default would be that this is the industrial, MRO, office supplies.
Right. That's where Amazon's got the best penetration. Space. So that would make sense.
And I think they're probably doing over $7 billion in GMV just in that segment, which is scary, honestly. It's $100-ish billion industry.
Right. So I think the biggest company in that segment, Grainger, for example, is like $10 to $11 billion in sales. So it's a big challenger there.
You would probably see similar trends if you went into other B2B distribution verticals as well. It may not be as pronounced as industrial. I think that's the tip of the iceberg in the sense of where you're really going to see the B2B impact first from an Amazon Business and from the marketplaces. The Grainger approach will never succeed. It'll only kick the can down the road for a few years. They're continuing to do linear. They're continuing to do e-commerce. I think they last reported around 800,000 sellers or SKUs rather.
Yeah.
And they want to add, I think, 5 to 10 million SKUs over the next 3 to 5 years. Remember that point. We're going to come back to that when we talk about Walmart. But basically, when you look at Walmart's SKU growth just in the past quarter, was it? In comparison to what Grainger is, it puts it to shame. And you can only get that level of SKU growth, as we were just talking about with Amazon marketplace model with hundreds of millions of SKUs, if you have a truly marketplace model.
B2B, by the way, interesting proof point. If you remember back, or if you're paying attention to this industry 3-4 years ago, the complaint is, Amazon will never succeed because people don't trust the products on the marketplace and all this kind of stuff. They have products from China. People don't want to buy it. Turns out that's not true. Certainly not an MRO and office supplies and that kind of stuff. The products are certainly good enough, and people trust Amazon that it's been growing very quickly. Mm-hmm. And in these products, in some of these categories, I'd say is becoming dominant.
Oh yeah,
in terms of the market share. Certainly on the spot buy side, which is where the marketplace is focused, not necessarily on the big contract stuff that distributors still do.
We did this video November 11th. So it just came out a week ago about TikTok and how when ByteDance bought Musical.ly and then turned it into TikTok, now that is being reviewed by the government, that acquisition. So we speak in this video about how putting regulation onto TikTok could be a good thing. I'm wearing the same shirt. Yeah, it's kind of funny and unfortunate. But anyway, the guidance in the video was accurate and that there's not necessarily something wrong with tech protectionism. And so our friend Ben Thompson over at Stratechery, his article, I think this came out today, also echoes this point. He does a good job of analyzing this New York Times article where they are giving a very praiseworthy review of TikTok, basically saying but to some people in the United States government, TikTok is a menace. And one big reason is the nationality of its owner. ByteDance is a Chinese company. Fears that TikTok is exposing America's youth to Communist Party indoctrination and smuggling their data to Beijing servers. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I don't understand why that's some inappropriate fear. It's actually happening, and there's plenty of proof that it's happening. Washington at this moment is suspicious of Chinese tech companies to a degree that can feel like paranoia. So there's over 200 million Americans using TikTok. Is that right? I don't know.
That can't be right.
TikTok's app has been downloaded 750 million times. I swear this guy at Facebook was just telling me it's got 200. It's got to be at least 100. You say it's 200 million. I'm telling you.
There's I think TikTok's business, from what I understand, has single digit share of its global volume in the US. I remember reading this week.
TikTok?
So yes.
No, I don't know. I think it's pretty strong in the US. That's not 200
million in the US.
But so anyway, there's 2 points of control that we thought would be appropriate on TikTok. One is to say your data needs to be stored in the United States, and that you can put monitoring around, is the data going back to China or not? And then the other one is that the teams and the people in TikTok, CEO, the executives, are all based in the United States. And the reason why is because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have TikTok to be regulating content and what Ben Thompson talks about here is that TikTok was censoring Houston Rockets videos. We've spoken in the past about how TikTok has censored out content about Hong Kong, talking about President Xi and many other things. And so if you have the data localization and data stored here, you can start to review that more closely and make sure, A, that's not happening, B, that the data isn't going back into a Chinese server, where you could have, from a national security standpoint, I think the US government's point is that you could have officials that are using TikTok and don't know, and they're in the government, and you could have some secrets going to the Chinese government.
The TikTok CEO, I think, was asked this week in an interview, if Xi Jinping asked you to look into something and give him some data, what would you say? And he said, no, I wouldn't do that. I would tell Xi Jinping no. And as Benedict Evans, a VC at Andreessen Horowitz, mentioned this in his newsletter, and he said it's unfortunate because everyone knows that's a lie.
Yeah, and your family will go to jail.
You would stop operating as a company and go to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. If we really in this country believe all of the hype and all of the fervor over privacy and all of the wrongdoing that Facebook and Google and all these big US tech monopolies have done to the average consumer in the United States, then why wouldn't we want to make sure that the data that our Americans are putting into this app is staying in the US and there's some control over privacy, right? Isn't that the whole reason everyone's so annoyed at Facebook and Google and all these data privacy, right? And then so
that it's being exploited by foreign powers to interfere with our elections, and it's
and then if you don't put any controls over this, it's not like it's a small company; it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's not like you need to impose this regulation on every single foreign tech company operating in the United States. This has come up specifically because they made this acquisition.
By the way, I think it's about 100 million downloads in the US, and that was earlier this year. So downloads, not active users. There's a big difference there.
Okay.
But
I knew it was 9 figures.
It's still substantial.
Yeah, it's big. So if anyone in the political spectrum and the media spectrum really cares about privacy, then you would absolutely say data localization and data storage for TikTok is bare bones, not that big of a deal.
Right.
And then if you want to be able to enforce that stuff, you need the executives in the United States, because in case they break it, if they're living in China, you have no recourse to actually enforce any of this, including them censoring people's posts to be privy to what President Xi wants.
There were some leaked internal documents and things at TikTok
we covered
this
those.
week. Yeah, about how they're trying to distance themselves. How they're trying to distance themselves from China and concerned about is this going to hurt our growth? I think the challenge is that they also think it's not really possible for them to do that fully as a Chinese-based company. So it's can't split the baby in half, so to speak.
Yeah, and the last point on TikTok, you could roll this thing one over to Grindr,
right?
Also owned by a Chinese company.
I think it was. Didn't the U.S. rule that they have to basically cancel the sale and spin it out recently?
Oh my God! Let's see.
Maybe that's
why
still in progress.
is the U.S. forcing a Chinese company to sell Grindr? Wow, that's a great point. Okay,
so there's precedent for this,
right? So there's precedent for this that they force.
The concern
and this
with
is
that
the same group, the CFIUS.
Right. The concern with that is basically they would take the data on that people's private lives and use that to basically bribe government officials. So that was the concern there. I think politicians were certainly concerned if they thought it hit them close to home. I think TikTok is more focused on children. So maybe there's one remove.
So they have to sell this by June 2020.
I think it's definitely a data privacy issue that I would be paying attention to if I were in Washington.
Yeah. And I don't think it's unreasonable. In the previous video that I was just showing that came out that we published last week, we were talking about is that tech. Yeah, okay, there's the same. Sure, I'm going back to this. So tech protectionism is something that China has used very, very well, and it's helped China, and it's done a very good job.
Right.
So what China's done in terms of tech protectionism and the idea of forcing Grindr to be sold back to a U.S. entity or a non-Chinese entity, or to put some light rules around TikTok data storage, I mean, this is China here in tech protectionism, and this is the U.S. down here. They are completely worlds apart in terms of how these things have operated. So a little bit of it, I actually think, A, would help the United States from a competition standpoint. Nothing wrong with being a little selfish. And B, would actually help enforce all the privacy concerns that this country has been so focused on for the past few years. So last one here, Walmart. So Walmart had a big beat, had continuous sales growth over 5 years, and their e-commerce sales rose 41%. And they were attributing a lot of that success to grocery orders. And so this also is kind of the grocery pickup in store. But then if you remember, they launched the unlimited delivery option, kind of like an Amazon Prime competitor, where you pay either $100 or $120 a year.
They also did in-home delivery.
And you can get in-home delivery of groceries and these kinds of things. So it's clearly working. The 41%, they had projected previously like high 30%-ish growth. And so this is at a 41%. They're beating on that. They've done this now multiple quarters in a row where they've beaten on the e-commerce growth. Not just having strong overall sales growth, but the e-commerce is continuing to outpace what their projections were.
Same-store sales growth, basically. The in-store retail stuff is growing, I think, about 3-4%, which is good for a traditional retailer. And the e-commerce stuff is growing basically an order of magnitude faster than that, 40-ish%. And the interesting thing, too, they also disclosed some numbers on third-party sellers and said basically since the beginning of this year, they've added like 10 million SKUs, and more than half of those are basically marketplace products. And that historically, the number of products on Walmart.com, I think they said that they want to increase it further this year. In the last year, basically 2017, they said it was kind of like Wild West. We opened let a bunch of people in. We've talked about that previously, how they rapidly expanded after Jet was acquired. They focused more on quality. And then the next year, the CEO basically said, Doug McMillon basically said, we need to focus on general merchandise, meaning kind of the general marketplace. The interesting stat that came out of that conversation, too, is he basically said, I think it was like 93% of the assortment on Walmart.com today is marketplace products. So they have about 3 to 4, I think, million core products that they sell, owned by Walmart, controlled by Walmart. But most of the products, not necessarily in terms of volume, but in terms of assortment, I think the total was about 52 to 55 million products on Walmart is sold by third parties. And that's not SKUs. That's product.
So,
SKUs
right.
would be 1 to 2 times kind of that multiple.
So let's kind of break that down. You went over a lot of numbers.
Yes.
So Walmart added 10 million products to the online catalog. Point number 1. That's this year in 9 months. 10 million.
Not over 3 to 5 years, Granger.
Not over 3 to 5 years, 9 months. Walmart added 500,000 of that, right? So they added 500,000 that they were selling directly. That means their buyers go out, they source the product, they buy it on the balance sheet, they resell it.
Right.
So 9.5 million products added
by third-party sellers. 95,
sellers.
or what is that? 90%, 95%?
95%.
Yeah.
I mean, that is big. They added 10,000 new sellers since the start of the year. 10,000 new sellers in 9 months. And they want to have even more. Now, the other numbers you were talking about. So now Walmart Marketplace has more than 32,000 sellers total. Mark, who came from Jet.com and has been leading e-commerce for Walmart, it says in 2017, we were adding SKUs so fast that we hadn't really kept a very high bar in terms of the quality of the SKUs and the quality of the merchants on the site. And now that has been, more and more of a focus for them. So last November, Walmart had 41 million products for sale online. So this is a year ago, of which 3.2 million were sold directly by Walmart. And now the catalog has grown to 52 million and still only 3.9 million are sold directly by Walmart.
So and basically in 12 months, they've added, 11 million SKUs. Only 700,000 of those are their own products.
Yeah, in 12 months, they've probably added like 3 Macy's worth of inventory. It's a joke. It goes to show you that the linear e-commerce model, or that would be like 12 Grangers worth of inventory.
Right. The linear
Take
model
your
just
pick.
can't
It's not
compete.
going to keep up.
Right.
And
this for them, they said, is slower growth, and that it's going to accelerate in basically a couple of years ahead.
so here's the number of products chart. I mean, I want that, right? If I'm a retailer, I want that.
I wouldn't say I want that. If I'm a retailer, I need that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be competitive.
Right. And if I don't have that, this scares me.
If I don't go that, my traffic tends to go in the other direction.
Right. Or you have the yellow line worth of growth. This is how you expand your first party products.
Right.
And this is how you get 41% growth in the third quarter for e-commerce sales, right? Grocery is, I don't want to discount the help of grocery. Grocery is still helping a lot.
It's huge because they have a huge advantage there. I think it's 52% of Walmart's retail sales in the U.S. is grocery. And that's
is it 52? I knew it was at least 40%.
That's an area where they have a big advantage over Amazon because they have so much infrastructure and consumer relationships in place to handle this. So that's an area where they have an advantage where Amazon isn't already established, whereas in general merchandise, they're playing catch up.
So here, this is kind of in recap notes from Doug, the CEO. We're making progress on many fronts, but we need to do more and move faster. Okay. This guy just added 10 million products in 9 months, and he wants to do more and move faster. Put that in comparison to any linear e-commerce retailer, distributor, when they talk about their growth plans for SKU or product growth over the course of a 3 to 5 year period of time. And instead, they need to take those projections and say, we're going to do this in 12 months. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind in the dust, or you already are being left behind in the dust.
The other interesting part of that quote, if you bring that up again, was he was talking about product mix and how that relates to marketplace. And basically read between the lines here, what he's saying is we make better margins on our marketplace products than we do on stuff we sell ourselves like food, because as the product mix changes, as we increase marketplace sales, we're going to make better margins. Much like Amazon does. I think the numbers that got leaked about a year ago where they make double the margins on marketplace products as they do on 1P sales, meaning the stuff they sell themselves. Walmart's in the same boat, and that's how they're going to improve profitability. Yeah,
the 1P sales are really they're driving the volume, making sure they've got the stickiness, the absolute lowest prices. The customers are coming back again and again. And the marketplace is, where they're taking their take rate as opposed to, making a spread basically on what they purchased the material for.
Yeah.
So look, we've said this before. I'll say it again. Walmart will go down as the number 2 dominant marketplace behind Amazon. Not saying they need to beat Amazon, but just going down as the strong number 2 player where there's only 2 winners as a general overall e-commerce marketplace provider. Walmart will go down as the greatest transformation story in the past 50 years. From a linear retailer doing over $500 billion, basically no infrastructure, to now giving Amazon a run for its money, and it's working. And I think that's what a lot of the linear enterprises miss, is that they have a lot of advantages to jumpstart a platform or a marketplace model. Even if you are a retailer that's going head to head with Amazon, remember, this really started in earnest in 2016. Right. We're 3-ish years into this. Now, Walmart's investing a lot of money. They're losing $1 billion a year in e-commerce, particularly on rolling out infrastructure to compete with Amazon. It's not cheap. But not like this is a positive.
Right. That said, not everyone operates at the scale that a Walmart does.
Not everyone operates at the scale.
So the costs aren't going to be the same if you're a more vertical specific retail organization. Walmart is basically doing everything.
Right. And we are seeing players win in vertical specific areas. Right. That could be a pure startup like we've talked about with Goat and StockX.
Yep.
Or you even have public ones like Farfetch. The RealReal is also public.
Yep.
You are seeing vertical specific marketplace winners as well. So look, there's still opportunity out there, but it's fleeting. And every day that you let it go by, especially even with Doug saying that they need to be adding more than essentially, if you just break it down equally, right? They need to be adding more than 3 million SKUs a quarter. And that's not fast enough. You can see slow, the pace that they want to be moving at. And you compare that to the linear players, and you can't even compare the two.
Right.
So anyway, we'll leave you on that note. Thanks for joining us today on Winner Take All, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.